everybody. Welcome to the next episode of Market Movers. I'm Erin Reese, Head of Marketing and Partnerships at Annex Cloud, and I'm here today with Jake Cook. He's co-founder and CEO of Tadpull. Welcome, Jake.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining us. Why don't we start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and about Tadpull and what you guys do and what you're working to accomplish.
Perfect. Yeah. So we work with kind of mid-market companies in e-commerce, and we're trying to kind of help them have the same tools and AI that, say, like an Amazon or a Facebook has. So we work really closely with great brands like Jackson Hole Resort, Caterpillar Workwear, and a host of others, using kind of their customer data, their digital marketing campaign data, and then their inventory or their product catalog data, and kind of mixing those together.
Great. And you're really focused in on the digital space.
Yeah, we only focus really primarily just on e-commerce and just kind of helping clients do just really three simple things. Just drive traffic to their site, so the right kind of traffic. Once they get that traffic, they're helping that traffic convert on site with personalization and all sorts of fun things to kind of push them through the journey. And then that last piece is kind of retention, and which is why we've been excited to kind of partner with Annex Cloud, because we see loyalty and retention is so key to building really kind of healthy, thriving businesses.
We agree.
Yes.
So as we were prepping for this conversation, we were talking about some of the trends over the last year and what's been happening in digital, and so many organizations really jumping to the web quickly for a lot of reasons. So what have you seen over the last year, and how are these folks spending their investments, and how are their strategies evolving?
It's been really a fascinating year in the sense of those that were doing e-commerce that were kind of in the game. Everybody in our portfolio grew. One of our clients has been around for almost 77 years, and they grew 40%, which is pretty remarkable for a brand that's been around that long. Those that weren't sure about e-commerce, they're kind of on the fence. Understandably, they kind of hedged and holding cash and not investing. We're finding a lot of those are especially the last few weeks here in early in 21 are like, okay, it looks like the world has changed and we've got to do something. And so we're seeing a lot of those kind of come back around, but they were kind of frozen in midair there for about a year. We saw.
Yeah, it's kind of surprising that people, that organizations just held back. I mean, I remember when it first happened, it was like, okay, but then it started. So it's amazing that you're still hearing that people are still a little hesitant or unsure of where to go. What is your advice when you're talking to organizations like that?
I like to steal the line from Jeff Bezos that, what will be true in 10 years is kind of a way to guide the strategy. And so will there be more e-commerce or less e-commerce in 10 years? And if you look at the data from the feds as e-com as a percentage of retail, I mean, we kind of had 10 years of growth in 10 months. And so we're kind of saying whether you're B2B, and some clients say, well, we're B2B, it doesn't really matter. And I think when you look at shifting buyers behavior, I don't think folks that are used to a B2C experience are going to cut you any slack if you're B2B. If I'm going to be buying something online, I want it super seamless, quick, easy, fantastic mobile experience. And so all those things, those bars are raised for everybody, whether you're B2B or B2C. So the good news is the technology these days is, pretty much Lego sets. I mean, you can, by and large, snap a lot of this stuff together, and it's not the massive undertakings it was, 5-10 years ago to build some of these things out. So that's kind of the good news. But I think it kind of comes back to, vision and culture and kind of where we're going. So we try to gently ask those questions without being insulting. That makes sense. Or we don't want to anger or provoke anybody, but just say well, do you think your customers are changing, their buyer behavior is changing, and how do we kind of meet those expectations?
Yeah, it's interesting. And when you're talking to them, how do you kind of coach them along on those things? Because it's a lot of the things I've been hearing lately is, and maybe a hesitation for some of them, is there's a lot of stats out there right now that talk about all the investment in digital, yet nobody is really, or very few are actually getting out of it what they had expected. Is that because they didn't set up the right plans to begin with, or is it they chose the wrong technology? maybe
Oh,
what's happening there, and is that having an impact on these folks that are still kind of waiting and seeing?
I think it's a fantastic question that gets into kind of a general theme. I've had the pleasure of kind of teaching undergrad and graduate courses on e-commerce and data science and digital marketing since 2007. And I can kind of tell you from the higher ed experience as an adjunct professor, like there's nobody really doing this yet at the higher ed. And I think our e-commerce class at the graduate level at the University of Montana, to the best of our knowledge, is one of the only ones that's just pure e-commerce. And so I think it's very different like accounting, where if you're going to come out of school, there's very specific gap principles in how you do accounting, right? But if you think about like digital marketing and then e-commerce, so digital marketing, I think is pretty nebulous and pretty dynamic and changing. And then you add this finance component, which is really critical for e-commerce. I think it's so interdisciplinary. Nobody really knows how it works. And then I think a lot of these, especially with mid-market, they hire folks that, they'll put together campaigns and all that stuff, but they're not necessarily super analytics driven. We've seen a little bit. And I can also say, I think from teaching a lot of my students I have in my marketing courses, they purposely avoided economics and statistics, and no shame. There's no problem. We've all got our strengths and our talents, but I think they thought marketing was going to be a lot more on the creative, fun stuff. And I think the idea of, oh, you can still do that, but you're going to have a lot of analytics behind it to kind of get budget and approvals and show results. So I think it's a generational shift, honestly, Aaron. I think like the generation coming up that grew up with digital, that's pretty savvy in it, I think that's when you'll start to see some huge shifts on results.
Interesting. And I know when we were chatting earlier too, you were talking about like a framework that you had around, I think it was like the 4 C's or something. Is that
Yes.
something you can share with us and give people a few tips?
Yeah. So, teaching this and working on a couple of textbooks, a lot of stuff I can't, there's no frameworks to teach students, and students need ways to kind of hang things in their minds as frameworks. And, we all learned the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, promotion. It's been around since, the early 60s as a model to kind of think about, how you do marketing. And so we got to thinking like, well, what's kind of a framework for e-commerce? And we kind of came up with this 4 C's. And the first one is kind of culture. And if you think about it, we always use this analogy of it's kind of like a solar system, right? You can have the sun and then you have some planets that are going to orbit it. And so the sun is really culture. And in that is, agile, focused, data driven. I think also culture that's open to experimentation or failing. So not everything's going to work, and that's okay. And we're going to run and learn and then go through these learning loops. And then that ability of really just betting on e-commerce or believing in it as an asset in the business. And the very last piece I'd add is customer centricity. So if people have lots of options to buy online, if the culture doesn't wake up to that and really embrace that and build something to build that loyalty piece, it's really hard. And then kind of around that sun is kind of a flywheel, if you will, and it's customer data. So really good customer data when we know lifetime value, we know which campaign they came from, we have net promoter score, all this really rich insights around the customer. We feed that into our digital marketing campaigns. So customers and then campaigns. And better customer data lets us go out acquisitions. We can run better ads into Facebook, much more sophisticated targeting and personalization with email or SMS. And then that last piece is catalog. So the 4th C is kind of catalog or inventory. So how do we move our product catalog based on margins, and how do we pair back in stock to the right customer that's ready to buy? And so when you get all these things kind of turning together, it really spins really elegantly. But if you don't have good customer data, you can't run good campaigns, and then you sit on inventory that you don't know how to move. So it's kind of they all kind of feed each other. So we've had pretty good luck, like kind of using that as a framework for clients. They can kind of get their hands around it and say, it's a journey to get these things to all come together, but you got to start someday on it. So
when I talk to different brands out there in the market, and some of the things that I hear and see, they may be doing a couple of the different pieces of what you're talking about. So there's the culture, or how do we put this out there, and we've got a brand that we're putting out there, or we have some customer data that we might be collecting in one spot, but they're not able to bring the other pieces together. So they're limited there. And I love the catalog piece, because I mean, obviously there's inventory that goes into a website, but are they really are the marketing people really connecting with the merchandising teams, and are they really more proactively understanding what the opportunities are? Is there a product with a better margin, or products we need to move, things like
Yeah.
that? So
And when we started building our software, it kind of hit us between the eyes, because we would spend 2 weeks designing a campaign for a product or a category of products. And we'd go out there and, they'd be like, oh, well, we're out of stock on that for the next 4 months. And so you basically take, a week or two of work, throw it in the trash, okay, what do we have in stock? And I think with modern ERP systems in the cloud, all that data is there. And there's kind of always been this, I would say, timeless rift between operations and marketing. Ops people don't want to talk to marketers don't talk to the ops people and the finance people. And so there's some of these silos that exist. And I think, with you can kind of surface some of those insights, marketing can really start to get to become a hero a little bit in the business, because we saw some research from Google that only 26% of CMOs are even invited to a board meeting, which is just astounding, right? And the average tenure of a CMO in the Fortune 500 can be, 18 to 22 months. So you kind of got to ask, compared to like, what's the CFO tenure and some of that. So you kind of ask like, well, why aren't marketers getting a seat at the table here? Or what are we missing? And I think a lot of that comes down to the language of business and analytics and data and finance. And you can go to your CEO and show, I took you gave us some capital, we moved that and we converted that into cash, and we can prove how we did that and how we're going to do more of it. I think you can always get invited to that boardroom meeting if you can prove that.
Exactly. And that's really what we should be doing, isn't it? Yeah, which kind of ties me to the brings me to the next question around, as we're seeing this transformation, albeit some faster and some a little bit slower, and with the economy that we're in these days, there's really a need to keep customers and keep them growing. And what are you advising your clients on, or what are you seeing their responses today in the industry?
We have been trying to work closely with the C-suite on customer lifetime value. And there's, you can look in some of these tools. We actually build our own kind of custom value model in our software. And then we do cohort analysis. And a lot of this is inspired from work coming out of the customer analytics group at Wharton, at the Wharton School. And Dr. Peter Fader, another guy, Dr. Dan McCarthy, they did some fantastic work. It was actually the cover story in Harvard Business Review last January, and really looking at evaluating businesses on a bottom-up approach. So almost at the molecular level, if you will, on the value of the customer. So when we can kind of help them think through and then look at those cohort models, like how value are these customers this year versus last year versus the year before? And then we can apply some finance tools like discounted cash flow, or ways we can kind of value that business overall over time. And then if we're not seeing those cohorts grow in value, then, okay, now we got to do something different in our experience and retention and all sorts of stuff like that. But we've been starting there. We're doing annual reviews right now, kind of looking back. Some of our clients we work with for 6-7 years now, and we're seeing those curves the last 3 or 4 years, they start to compound, and we're seeing that kind of exponential growth in the value of the customer. And it provides a little bit of a proxy for the overall value of the business. And so that's been helpful to kind of say, okay, marketing and digital and e-commerce and all this stuff, but let's get back to like, is your business growing in value, and how do we prove that with some math? And it's been really, really fun, because you can start to see like, wow, these types of campaigns drive our most valuable customers. They buy consistently. They don't buy a discount. They don't return. They're highly engaged on email or on site. Okay, when we know those, like, we can start to run more acquisition campaigns off those profiles and ultimately prove that we're growing the business value. So I can go on for hours about this stuff, Erin. I think it's super interesting.
My mind's kind of going with you. I'm like, okay, which question do I want to ask next? And we certainly see through some of the things that we do at Annex Cloud, where we have we have the loyalty platform, but we also have this huge engagement suite where we can engage people on social and ratings and reviews and influencers and things like that. And we see that the folks that are engaging as well as transacting are spending 200% more. I mean, it's synergistic to the growth, which sounds like a lot of what you were just saying about those campaigns as well.
Yeah, and I think what's great, that HBR article, that Harvard Business Review article last year was, loyalty leaders grow revenue 2.5 times faster. And so loyalty isn't one of these like, oh, well, we just kind of got to do. It's like, no, this actually really does, it's not just a little bit, it's a lot. So we've also worked on businesses where they don't have loyalty, and you run the statistical and predictive analytics on this using some machine learning. And, the kiss of death is when your average order value equals your lifetime value, because you're always in acquisition mode.
Always
and
churning. Yeah.
Always churning. And I think those are really hard businesses to run without a lot of capital. They're kind of brutal to try, eventually as we say, there's always kind of a law of bad click-throughs. You'll eventually saturate any acquisition channel in digital marketing. And then you're kind of, you're kind of capped. So some of that stuff you can't change. It's just baked into the business model, but those are really hard, hard problems to solve, we found.
Yeah, when we've looked at churn over the years, it really is consistently. It's in two major places. It's churn within the first couple of transactions, or it's later in the lifetime. So some of your best customers churning. Those are the most. Churn happens everywhere, but most expensive are in those two areas.
And have you guys found companies are able to rectify that and fix it, or is it kind of just baked into the business model and they just have to kind of live with that reality?
The ones that actually look at it and accept it are able to move, is what I've seen. I've had conversations with CMOs where they say, well, I don't have a loyalty problem. I need more acquisition, and I need 80% more new customers or something. It's like, well, but you're not growing at an 80% rate. So why do you need so many new customers? It's because they're falling off after that first or second transaction, when actually they could begin to be looked at more as retention.
Yes.
Versus acquisition.
And Aaron, in your experience, is it the second touch? Is it that second transaction or third transaction that most companies kind of fumble on? Or
yeah, it's between like 1 and 4 is where the big hole is.
Yeah. And have you any examples of companies that kind of like before and after have gone from really bad to really good? Because that's quite a shift to kind of like rectify that if you have that math happening.
Yeah, I mean, we've helped a lot of organizations, through the loyalty, through my experiences with loyalty, to really focus in on that and make some significant changes. There's nobody that I can actually name by name, but
sure.
But yeah, there have been some of those folks that we have had those conversations with CMO, and it's like, wait, no, think about it this way, and then that shift. It was kind of an aha moment of, oh yeah, maybe if I engaged a little bit more here, or brought your loyalty, your strategy in a little bit earlier, we can make some significant difference.
Yeah, I think that Pareto distribution, 80-20 rule, it's just kind of everywhere. We were actually the other night in class, we were teaching and we were looking at the demo store. So the Google Merchandise Store has a Google Analytics demo account, and you can go in, and we were like, okay, let's have a bet. How much of the revenue comes from current customers and returning? And, sure enough, it's 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the customer base, which is returning, and in a random website like that. So it's everywhere. And to your point, everybody obsesses on acquisition. Oh, we need to be running TikTok ads, or we got to try this new Snapchat ad format. And you're kind of like, well, we certainly can, but what about all those other companies that bought from us, and we just send them a special email or recommend some products that fit with their journey and reward them for it. And so
give them a little love. Yeah,
a little love. Yeah,
they might come back. You'd be surprised.
Yeah. I think it's kind of akin to like diet fads. It's like, we're always looking, myself included, like, oh, well, you need to do paleo. Now you do keto. Now you need to, it's kind of like, it's always this diet fad, it seems like, with customer acquisition and retention.
That's
so
fun. We're all marketers. We're all after that next shiny thing, right?
Exactly.
Oh goodness, I love it. Well, I'm sure we could talk about this for forever, but let's look to wrap this in a bit. So in thinking about that, as you look at 2021 and beyond, what's your advice for organizations as they're planning for their digital future?
Own your data. Get dead serious about owning your data. And that is something that I think a lot of companies don't realize that's an asset. It's not necessarily recognized from a GAAP accounting principles perspective, but it absolutely will be. If you look at any modern monopoly, Amazon, Google, Facebook, they're built on data. And what we're seeing over and over again is that data is completely becoming obfuscated over it. And it's, it's the, I always think about that joke or a quote from Ernest Hemingway. I think the sun also rises, but how do you go bankrupt? Slowly and then all of a sudden. And I think data is the same way. You're going to go bankrupt. You don't realize it. They're kind of boiling the frog. But I think if you look at what's going on with like Apple and Facebook right now and the iOS 14 update, where all of a sudden like you got 7-day attribution, that's it. And you just see conversion. You don't see add to cart, nothing, just gone, boom. Well, if you're doing a lot of mobile business, chances are and really high value customers are on an iPhone in terms of like household income and what they spend, you're going to lose all that. I think we look at another customer that's working with some Amazon. They have a direct to consumer channel and an Amazon store. And like we can get, it's a roll the dice that we're going to be able to pull from the API for customer insights. And Amazon won't let you understandably have any of that data. So yeah, I say own your data and then own your future as a result. So we push that really hard. And nothing else, just start to build this and as a hedge or just as an insurance policy. Even if you don't know what to do with the data, just get it clean, get it organized. And then be able to kind of act on it or have a strategy for it a little bit down the road if you're not sure right now. But with machine learning and AI, the gasoline is going to be the data. And if you don't have any gas, you can't take the car anywhere. So that's the biggest thing we preach.
I love it. Obviously, it plays right into customer loyalty as well. And the way I'm looking at like loyalty concepts in our technology going forward, it's you can certainly have points or discounts or some kind of reward mechanism, but at the very baseline, it's really like a commitment to a value exchange with the customer.
Exactly. And that's why I think, that 4Cs thing, like that culture thing, we just come back to that over and over again with prospects and clients of what does customer centricity really mean? It sounds nice and we really believe we understand voice of the customer and all that kind of stuff. But, how do you kind of bake that through the whole organization? And I think that's, I come back to, we always kind of make the joke about Amazon. They're kind of fun to pick on, but, Darth Vader, Jeff Bezos is Darth Vader and he has the Death Star. He can kind of point it at anything and blow it up, right? And he's got all this amazing technology, all this infrastructure, all this AI and data. And so, but if you go back and you read some of his annual letters and you just, there's a really good book on Amazon story, but it all comes back to customer centricity. When they launched Prime, they lost so much money on Prime, but it was like, no, we're going to build a loyalty and we're going to build that habit. And as a result, I think almost like 82% of American households have Prime now. But they lost their shirt for years. But big picture strategic thinking around the customer obviously has created a lot of shareholder value.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Own your data. I love it.
Own your data. Please just own your data.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, Jake. This has been a pleasure and lots of education for me too. So thank you so much.
Likewise. No, thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. You too. Take care.